There you go. I'm John Kane, and I welcome you to Let's Talk Native on Saturday, May 18th. While this program may not provide a path to spiritual enlightenment, we do encourage and in some cases start conversations. We don't do prayers and we don't do buffalo speeches. We take a tough look at our history, oppression, and survival. All right, there we go. There we go. We talk about culture, the arts, the politics, and identity. And we may step on a few toes along the way, but our real goal here is to bring people together by breaking down what separates us. So look, let's do this, and we do it here live from the Cattaraugus territory of Seneca Nation. So let's talk Native. But first, let me remind you that the show does stream on our website www.letstalknative.com. We stream live video of the show on Facebook Live. We take the audio and we put it up on SoundCloud and out on as a podcast after the fact. And we take the video and we post it on our YouTube channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV. You can find it there. I am the host of Let's Talk Native, and I am assisted by Jake Proud in studio, who is managing our audio and our video. Opened up again with my friend Jay Fastcloud and his song. It's time. Yeah, it's time. It's his latest release dedicated towards missing and murdered Indigenous women, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more today. I'm going to reiterate a few things I talked about in the last show, but for me, when we look at this issue, it's twofold when it comes to what we do to battle this whole idea of violence against our women, and whether our women are missing or murdered, or whatever the circumstances, the conditions that have been created that have caused some of our people to have been disappeared, and not just women either. This is men and boys and women and girls. So it's important that people understand the two fronts on this thing are first off, it's native on native crime. Somewhere between 20 and 30% of the violence that domestic violence that happens on our territories, the violence against women, happens at the hands of native men. And look, I realize that sometimes it might be a native person from another community within a community or whatever. It could be a spouse, could just be a domestic partner of some sort, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever the whole circumstance is. But again, as much as 30% of that violence is happening at the hands of our own people. And not only is it happening at the hands of our own people, you can find, without looking too hard, so many of our people that will try to justify it, or they'll cover, they'll protect their loved one, their male, whether it's their son or their grandson or their nephew or their brother or whatever, their uncle who's committing these crimes against our women, and they'll cover for it. They'll even go so far as to try to justify it. Wow, she really asked for it. No, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. No woman asks to be murdered. No woman asks to be assaulted. I'm not saying that there aren't circumstances where both parties aren't contributing to the escalation of a conflict, but there's really never a time that a man should be beating a woman or a child. So one of the fronts on this thing is what we do ourselves. How do we stop being complicit in the violence against women? Again, I'm not saying how do we make women act right. No, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not going to get into victim blaming or victim shaming. I'm still concerned about what men do. And not only what men do, but what men are complicit in. Because if it's our buddy, well, maybe it's our buddy. Yeah, he's fine, but once he gets drinking, he gets to a point, then he turns into a jerk. And, next thing you know, he's beating up his woman and his children. Well, then stop drinking with a son of a bitch. I mean, Jesus, we don't have to tolerate this stuff. There's no way that we should be looking the other way. Look, when I see what people do with the current president of the United States, they'll ignore all of the character flaws of this guy. Why? Because they got a tax cut? Or because he fulfills, some sort of validation to their racist viewpoints on things? Well, it's the same thing that happens in native territories. If we're looking at our buddy and say, yeah, he's a good guy, yeah, he does this, this, and this, but that's none of my business. Well, it is our business. We're raising our children and our grandchildren. We have loved ones. We all have women in our family. And for every man that we tolerate who's doing this kind of thing to a woman, we're perpetuating that same behavior. So the first front, and I can't downplay this. The first front or not first front, but one of the fronts, put it that way. I'm not saying I'm not even prioritizing it. But one of the fronts on this thing is what we do within our own communities, with our own families, with our own, friends and relatives to stop this. So that's one of the battle lines. Of course, the other one, and the one that's really more significant in terms of total amount of violence, and perhaps the most dangerous, is the violence that's perpetrated against our people from the outside. Because what happens there is you not only have a non-native person, man, who and he too may be a domestic partner, who thinks that he can get away with this stuff. Why? Because he can. Because the law enforcement isn't there. Because the whole system, this is that systemic racism that I talk about. The whole system is geared towards never providing adequate oversight to their own people when they're committing a crime against a person of color, in particular a native person. So we need to do more there. We need to make sure that it is known that there's zero tolerance. Again, zero tolerance for when our own men, boys, whatever, people commit violence against each other. But certainly, we are not going to tolerate people coming onto our territories and taking advantage and abusing, abusing our loved ones. So those are the two. I mean, and again, 70 to 80% of the crime committed against our women is from the outside or from non-natives. Not necessarily on the outside. Some of these people are living in our communities. And look, and as remote as some native communities are, others aren't so remote. I mean, look, I live here on the Cattaraugus territory of Seneca Nation, where we broadcast from. And look, there's a constant flow of non-native. Look, we've got retail stores. So there's no way you can, really even adequately suggest where the line sometimes is even drawn. I mean, in terms of traffic patterns and that kind of stuff. That's why when I work with my friend James Sugoyeta, when we talk about trying to put together a network, we know there's a challenge in trying to put together a network to adequately respond in a timely way when somebody turns up missing, and for us to do our own investigation. But again, understanding that there are two lines in that battle, two battle lines, and part of it is making sure that we don't tolerate it when our own people commit those acts of violence against our people, and that we make it very clear to the outside, including to the outside law enforcement. We don't care how tolerant they are of this behavior. We're not tolerant of it. So those are the two things, and they're not small things, and they're not easily compartmentalized or addressed. But those are two things in terms of addressing the actual violence. But I have another issue. The other issue is prevention. And I talked about it a little bit on the last show, and I want to talk about it more. Because the best way to prevent a quality of life that not only invites this kind of behavior and makes it easier for it to happen is by making sure that our people are proud of who we are, and that we have hope and opportunity for the future, especially for our young people. Because if we're telling a 13-year-old girl in our community that we got nothing for you, so unless you want to just live this life that you've gotten to witness in your young life, and your mother witnessed it, and her mother before her, which is not necessarily a life of hope and opportunity. If we don't offer our young people, and not just our young women, but our young men too, if we don't offer hope and opportunity, then our societal norms degrade, as they have been for centuries. Why? Because of the circumstance that we're living in, the oppression, the racism, the abject poverty, the constant battles with state and federal government over everything from the trying to pursue economic development to just plain sustainability. We know that is what's responsible for the abject poverty that exists in our territory. And of course, we can't leave out the fact that we have had generations of trauma that range from everything from from brutal massacres to, mass hangings like with the Dakota 38, to residential schools, to slavery. Yeah, let's not forget the level of slavery that was perpetrated against Native people. And of course the blatant racism, the violence that has been committed for centuries, the rape culture that came into our communities, all of that stuff. We know that's all brought us to where we are today. But so when I hear somebody say, "Well, that's in the past, get over it," well, it isn't. As long as we got missing and murdered Indigenous women, it isn't in the past. It's today too. And the fact that non-Native law enforcement doesn't give a rat's ass about it. In fact, they'll write off many of the deaths to suicides, even if it's not true. If somebody's missing, they'll write it off to a runaway. But the thing is, and I'm not saying that if a Native person, a young Native person, has a plan, and has hope, has an opportunity that they're going to pursue, that nothing's going to happen. But at least if they have something not just to live for, but to shoot for in terms of goals. I mean, a real goal to shoot for, a plan, a strategy, a career, or maybe a series of doors they want to walk through. If we continue to tell our people that the only hope you have, or the only opportunities you have, is to leave, well, for one thing, we're kind of depleting the gene pool. If we're telling all the people with aspirations and all the people with ambition that you need to, there's nothing for you here, and this is exactly what we've been telling our people for years. There's nothing here for you. If you want a career, if you want to do something with your life, you've got to go out and get an education. You got to go out and pursue a career. Look, I've listened to our own people try to suggest that if we utilize sovereignty as a to advance regulatory advantages, to create opportunities on our territory, that's wrong. I've heard Onondaga say, "Look, you want to work, you go outside and work. We don't need jobs on our territory. Our territories are just a place to sleep." Well, you know what? That's absurd. That's absurd to suggest that we can't build a life or lives for ourselves on our own territories. But that has been the mentality for generations. So what I'm suggesting is we've got to start providing opportunities for our young people. And look, I'm gonna say it right here. I have a studio here. And many of you may have seen, we just produced, Jake and I just worked on a video last week, one that we're pretty proud of. We like what we've done here, and we're going to do more of them. But you know what? I've got an audio studio, and I've got a video studio here that's an opportunity for people to do something. So I want to encourage young people. Look, I'm not saying that the door is going to be unlocked and people can just walk in and out of here. But if somebody has an idea, if somebody wants to produce something and wants to create something, we would like to help. And I've put an open call that I'd love to have a co-host. And you know what? I would love to have a female co-host because I want some gender balance in the program. And frankly, I'd rather have a young host. That way, there's some age balance too. And look, it's not because I can't do the show by myself, but I want people to have an opportunity. But we have equipment, we have an opportunity here. We can shoot small videos, we can do a variety of different things. We can work on doing things on the outside. We can shoot outdoor, shots. We can do all kinds of stuff. I'm not saying that we have a track record for producing full-length documentaries, but that's where we're going. So if we're going there, this is one of the things that I've always said about pursuing opportunities. The idea of pursuing an opportunity isn't to bust open a door and then slam it shut behind us. If we're going to pursue an opportunity, what we got to do is break down the door so others can come along. I'm not looking to be the only person doing this kind of show or a show period. Look, there's other people doing radio. And I don't begrudge any of them. The more people doing this kind of work, the more people who are doing, the more Native journalists there are, the more Native radio hosts or television hosts or whatever, the better. In fact, the problem is most of the people who are already doing this stuff aren't prepared to talk about the stuff that we're talking about. They're already in mainstream. They've already been assimilated so much. So I'm saying the more of us that are doing this, the more voices like mine are going to be out there. The more voices that are going to come from the grassroots. See, here's the thing. Because we've embraced this notion that we don't have any opportunities on our territories. If you look at the native people who've been successful, including writers and actors or actresses, people in the media in general, most of the successful people, lawyers, doctors, most of them, they didn't grow up on a native territory because they were already told that there's no opportunity. If you're going to live on a native territory, you go nowhere. Well, I say bullshit to that. We have to embrace who we are, where we live, and the community that we rise up from. We've got to do this at a community level. So look, I'm not saying that my total answer is people can step up to and become more engaged in media. I'm offering that out there, but there's a lot more that I'd like to help happen. So we have to provide opportunities. We have to empower our young people to do the things that my generation hasn't done. You know, what I've decided to do here in terms of starting a radio show almost 9 years ago, and we'll be entering our 10th year this summer. I decided to do it because I didn't want to talk about it anymore. That's the conversation that when James joined me on the show a couple of episodes ago. We said, look, we have meetings, we have gatherings, we go to gatherings. I mean, look, and some of them are social. We go to these, powwows and, all these youth gatherings, and we go to these great law recitals, and we go to sings, and we do all these things, and we all come together, and we don't build anything off of it. We don't start anything from that. That's all we do. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing that, but at some point, if we don't use our networking capability, if we don't use our shared resources, and some of those shared resources aren't just financial resources, they may be geography. I mean, look, if there's somebody who's really talented in a very remote territory, say in the Southwest or in the plains or wherever, that wants to pick up a microphone, even this far away, we can do something together. But whatever the opportunity is, look, we can talk about building, physically building. We can talk about building in terms of just having people join together. But this is what we need to do. And I'm saying that my generation, us, the adults, if we don't start creating the opportunities for our children and our grandchildren, then they're going to look at our own territories as something they don't want to be a part of. And because they can take that attitude, they can feel like they're on a path to nowhere. Why? Because we aren't shining a light. We aren't empowering them. So as much as I want to kick the crap out of somebody who beats up any of our does anything to one of our women or our children or even our men. Look, I've jumped in a car when I heard one of our guys got jumped. I've gone looking for people when I heard some story of somebody being abused. And I'm not trying to say that because I'm a hero, but we've all been confronted by that. But then how many of us look the other way when it turns out that it was our buddy that popped the mother of their children in the face? And we may all have been a little bit guilty of that at some point. I don't know. I mean, it's always that tough situation. When do you cross over? When do you cross that line and we say, look, I can't say that's none of my business anymore. But we've got to start doing something here. We've got to start not only setting an example about what we were willing to tolerate, but while many of us in my generation, we've missed opportunities. And part of the reason we missed the opportunities is not because we didn't recognize them. I mean, that's part of it. But we also didn't have the support to do it. We were always told sometimes, we were told by relatives, we were told by friends, that's never going to work. I mean, look, we got pigeonholed. I mean, for generations, the men all went and worked iron. They weren't construction. And there's nothing wrong with that. But part of the problem with it was that many times our guys were leaving the community. They were going to New York. They're going to Philadelphia. They're, or right here, they're going to Buffalo. They're going to Detroit. They're going to Chicago. They're going to they were going to all these places, leaving their family behind to go out and earn a living. And look, it was a good living. I mean, our people saw incomes and saw salaries they'd never seen before in their lives. But it also broke down the family. Sorry, I hate to say it, but many of our men ended up leaving their families, never to come back, or starting a second family, have two families, one in the city with a white woman, and then one back home on the res. Look, I'm not saying that's because this isn't hypothetical. This is real. This really happened. So even that opportunity, that became the pigeonhole that we all did that. And of course, then we got into cigarettes and we got into gas and we got into gaming. But there's more to life than that. And there's more that we can do right within our own communities. We listen to all this crap going on with the United States over, import and export and tariffs and trade wars and that kind of stuff. I hear everybody say, oh, well, the answer to that is go everything made in America. Well, you know what? That's crap too. The key to having real economic vitalization is buying local, not just buy made in America. Buy some, make sure that you're supporting the producers of whatever it is, food, obviously services you're going to get local, but whatever you can get made locally, produced locally, whatever local artisanship that you can patronize. And look, if you have a choice of going to McDonald's or a family restaurant, go to the family restaurant, for crying out loud. I mean, these are the kinds of things. And of course, if you can do a family restaurant on native territory, then support the one that's closest to you. Do what you can do to support the local business. And again, I'm saying, if you're native, you should patronize your native retailers, your native, food service, your native, vendors or service industries, whatever else. Because that's what's really involved with stimulating the economy. I mean, look, if you're throwing all your money away to Walmart or McDonald's or Burger King, there's a big chunk of that money that just leaves and never comes back to an area. And you're subsidizing, rich people. That's what you're doing. So the more that we can start to provide the services and the products and the services that we need locally, and look, and I realize that some of this stuff may involve relationships that we've never had before. But I think these are the kinds of things that we got to think about doing. We've got to do more. And this isn't even just about money. This isn't about developing economics. It's about developing opportunities. It's about giving our young people options. One of the things, and I've talked about this, I suggested this to a few counselors. Look, our young people, they get money when they become of age, whether it's 18 or 25. I don't even know what, here in Seneca territory. So they get a pretty good chunk of money when they become legal age. Now, are we really providing the kind of financial literacy to those and explaining the opportunities that they can have with that? Look, it may not be enough money to start a big business, but maybe if with some of the programs that they have here, they paired people up and said, but you could partner. There you got 2 or 3 people at the same age that are coming into $10, $20, $30,000. You guys put that together, and maybe we match some funds with some of the Seneca Nation resources. You guys could start a company and give opportunities. And it isn't just about starting a company; it's about how utilizing that money to make an investment in their own future, not just blow it on a hot car or traveling for a year and then having the money all gone. There's nothing wrong with traveling. There's nothing wrong with getting a vehicle. But we have to think a little bit different, because if the only thing that our young people know is I'm going to get a wad of cash when I turn 18 or 21 or 25, and that's the only thing that drives them, who knows the condition that they will be in mentally, physically, where they will be when that time comes. So to me, as much as I want to play a role in stopping the violence against our people. I know that real prevention is going to come from the opportunities that we give our young people in the first place, so they don't go down a path that either leads them to be a victim, to be the abused, or the abuser. No one wants to grow up to be an abuser or to be abused. They don't want to be. But there are certain things that happen along the way that put our people in that spot. It puts our women in that spot, and it puts our men in those spots. All right, hey, we're at the bottom of the hour, so we'll take a break. We'll go out with a Bug and Malone tune, and I'll talk about Bug and Malone when we come back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native.
True stories, some real ish for your mind. Little Lisa was lost, she had a lot of addictions. Growing up fast, she had many convictions. Caring for the family and all the dysfunctions. Little girl was traumatized, there was a lot of assumptions. That her stepdad was raping her, he took her childhood. Son of a bitch was no good, a crackhead amongst the hood. Her mom was an alcoholic, she was numb to her pain. Her world was coming down like a warm summer rain. Wanted to tell her mom about it, but held back her cries. Tears in her eyes, thinking about her dad's suicide. Took his life with a bullet right in front of him. Before he pulled the trigger, said he loved each one of them. Then Lisa blames herself, started cutting her wrist. Wrote a letter to her boyfriend, sealed with a kiss. She can't take it no more, she wants to be with her dad. Said it'll make her happy, that is something that she never had.
This is the story of a child with agonies and pain. The story of their lives and how they survive the day. And it's a story of dismay, where bliss will never be. And it's a story that we know too well, but wish to never see. And it's a story of a child with agonies and pain. The story of their lives and how they survive the day. And it's a story of dismay, where bliss will never be. And it's a story that we know too well, but wish to never see.
Little Johnny being teased every day at school. There to learn something, but feeling like a fool. While the girls laugh at him cause he's big and overweight. Sitting by himself in the cafeteria during break. Comes from a broken home and his family is poor. And prays that his dad don't hit his mom anymore. Goes home to the screaming and the furniture crashing. And if he interferes, dad gives him a good lashing. He cries himself to sleep just to drown out the noise. Wishing that he was one of the popular boys. He knows back to school the next day they're all gonna laugh. Teasing that he's poor, always teasing that he's fat. He's got a plan to silence all of them and even his dad. Crazy thoughts going through his mind and some of them are mad. The next morning he takes a gun, his mom will see no more abuse. His dad is dead, off the class, I think the devil lit his fuse.
This is the story of a child with agonies and pain. The story of their lives and how they survive the day. And it's a story of dismay, where bliss will never be. And it's a story that we know too well, but wish to never see. And it's a story of a child with agonies and pain. The story of their lives and how they survive the day. And it's a story of dismay, where bliss will never be. And it's a story that we know too well, but wish to never see.
12-year-old Mary, she was diagnosed with cancer. She was raised Christian, so she knew the Lord had the answer since the age 5. She was type 1 diabetic, pricking her finger and taking shots is pathetic. She was dealt a bad hand, but little Mary was strong. I know I said was cause she didn't live very long. Between the chemotherapy and losing all her hair, her mom and dad was there, but she started not to care. Her organs started failing down, first went her kidneys. This is the type of story that really fucking hit me. She wanted to be a doctor, find a cure for diabetes. And we complain about her life until we had to see to go through it. Praying that our kids don't have to suffer. We always hear stories like this and start to wonder. We look at our babies and it kinda gets scary. Be thankful for your life, rest in peace, little Mary.
This is the story of a child with agonies and pain. The story of their lives and how they survive the day. And it's a story of dismay, where bliss will never be. And it's a story that we know too well, but wish to never see. And it's a story of a child with agonies and pain. The story of their lives and how they survive the day. And it's a story of dismay, where bliss will never be. And it's a story that we know too well, but wish to never see.
All right, thanks for coming back. Hey, let me go ahead and thank my sponsors. I want to thank Ross and Holly John and the RJE family of businesses, and Eric White and ERW Enterprise. They're our main sponsors, and I've got another sponsor who kind of remains nameless. We'll just put it that way. But I don't have a whole lot more than that. I got 3 people, 3 companies essentially that support what I do here, and and that gets it done. I mean, that gets done what we need to do here, but it doesn't give us much growing space. I mean, I've talked about this before. I've got this missing and murdered Indigenous women design that I put together for a flag a couple of years ago, and I haven't had the resources to get flags printed yet. So, look, so when I put the the ask out there, to support the work that we do, know that it's not just about doing a couple of radio shows. It's not about producing a few videos. It is that, and that stuff doesn't come without expense. In fact, we just start looking at before the show a couple of other services that we want to purchase that will allow us to expand our capability and do a little bit more. And we do look. We're frugal. We do what we can with what we have. But the more the more support we have, the more we can do. So, hey, if you've been a supporter in the past and perhaps haven't done anything in a while, give me a call. I'd be happy to stop by and pick up a collection, pass the hat or whatever else. We do have some ideas, and again, James and I plan to work together to try to do more on this, specifically on this missing and murdered Indigenous women issue. So, look, I want to thank the sponsors that do have. I want to thank the sponsors that have helped me in the past. We couldn't be making it here into our 10th year if I didn't have a whole bunch of people over the years support what we do here. So I am grateful for that. I'm also grateful to folks like my wife and others who share the program, share the videos, they share the Facebook live stream, they share my Twitter posts and my the podcast, all of it, and that's how we get the word out. And look, I post memes, I post commentary, I do the videos, I do the show. It's all about trying to start a conversation. And yeah, look, I can be as sarcastic as the next person. I just got accused of that just the other day. My sarcasm. Sarcasm's a bit of it's a strategy to communicate, I guess. And I try to, even when I'm trying to offer something with a little sarcasm, the sarcasm could be interpreted two ways. If I'm telling somebody, yeah, look the other way. Look, that is an option. It's an option. People can look the other way. And that's the way they can, that's the way they manage that thing that we call cognitive dissonance. The way that you manage the fact that you are in tension because there's a behavior that that you've accepted and that you're living with that contradicts what your core values are. And so the way that you either ignore your core values or you pretend that behavior is not real. So this is what our struggle is. So, but I tell most people, don't ignore the tension. Let's solve the tension. Let's resolve the problem. And most of that, it just has to do with changing, maybe changing our lifestyles a little bit, changing our behavior. And sometimes it means changing our core values because maybe our values have been twisted. And there's plenty of people who have strange views about, their identity, what assimilation has done to them. So in order to solve the issue that involves that brings about this cognitive dissonance, we either need to change our behavior or change our core values. And, that's the way you solve the tension that you live your life, because that tension contributes to the very thing that we're talking about. This, living in a state of depression or, all of these, these things that we're challenged with. Hey, during the break, I played a song. What was it? The Stories of a Child by Buggin' Malone. Buggin' just won the rap hip hop album or CD of the year at the Indigenous Music Awards last night, and I couldn't be prouder of him. Look, I've been a big fan of Buggin' Malone. We did a whole broadcast here last fall, and we did a great show together. And I'm proud of the work that he does, and what I've noticed with a lot of these guys, and it's almost even more pronounced in some of the hip hop artists, frankly, and maybe it's because of the subject matter they cover. But I know musicians struggle, man. When we talk about struggling with depression and even this cognitive dissonance issue, I see the struggle that musicians go, and almost all of them that I've come to know, I empathize and sympathize, I guess, with with what they struggle with. I mean, it's a tough business, and as much as the internet has made music more accessible and getting music out easier, it's made it sometimes more difficult to earn a living doing it. And our people are not exactly embraced by the mainstream entertainment industry. Um, Especially with music like hip hop, if you don't have a large audience that is drawn to your music, and that's why urban music in general, the hip hop, the reason it's so successful for black artists is because they have a large population and a connected population that can drive up sales and put demands on that music. Our population is pretty small, so we've got to be able to communicate with our music in a message that resonates with Native people and non-Native people, and that can be difficult. So, very, very proud of I know that Bugger Malone has, he's like many of the artists that I've come to know. They've given up a few times along the way, and they come from backgrounds that are difficult. And so I'm very proud, and again, I offer my congratulations to Bugger Malone. He is one of those solid voices out there that we need, even as we're trying to keep the conversation going about the social ills that our people face, and that's what's key to the music. And so I played Jay Fastcloud in the beginning with his song dedicated towards missing and murdered Indigenous women, and so I was pleased to play a track from Bugger Malone. Again, his the album that he won is For Humanity, Volume 1. Good stuff by Bugger Malone. So again, congrats to his success. Hey, on May 30th in New York, I'm going to screen Wind River. Wind River is a major motion picture. If you don't know the film, it's a major motion picture that is the theme is around missing and murdered Indigenous women. And in fact, they have an on-screen graphic, giving some of the stats associated with what Native women face, in particular Native people. But this is a big budget film. This is Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen are the stars, which obviously mean that although it's a film about Native people, yes, there are white heroes. As my board operator down in New York says, Reggie, he says, this is where you once again have to thank white people for saving us. And so again, I realize that the industry is what it is, and in order to get box office sales, you need to have a draw. So you rely on on these let's face it, Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen, they're a big name, especially because of the Avengers movies and that kind of stuff. And but this is a good film. I mean, look, it's a complex issue. Because there's so many factors that are related to why our people are in danger, why they're vulnerable, but this covers a bunch of them. I mean, not all of them, but it covers a bunch of them. And so I'm going to screen the film at the Brooklyn Commons at 388 Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, New York on May 30th. That's not this coming Thursday, but the Thursday after that. And I hopefully we get a good draw, and we're going to do a Q&A. We're going to talk about this. About what is missing and murdered Indigenous women. We'll talk about that. We'll do a Q&A after the film. So if you're not familiar with the film, check it out on your own. But if you're in New York, come out and join us. And it's always the events that I host at the end of every month usually draw a pretty good crowd, and we have some great conversations, and it's a good chance for us to socialize, share our thoughts and our concerns over so many issues. And this is one that I feel very strongly about. And there's an irony that I'm showing this film in a couple of weeks, because when this film came out, it was right while Savannah Greywind was in the news. So those of you who aren't familiar with Savannah was a young Native woman who was murdered and had the baby cut from her womb. And she was discarded in a river. This was in Fargo, North Dakota. And look, unlike so many of the issues that happens with our people, I won't condemn what the police did in terms of this incident. This isn't one that they ignored. It was investigated, and the folks who were responsible were arrested, and they were caught, and that kind of thing. But it is such an absurd thing to think that that anybody could think that they could just kill a woman and steal a baby out of her dead body. I mean, it's an absurd thing, and it's so absurd to think that something this heinous could have happened to Savannah Greywind a few years ago, and then be repeated again. Because just the other day, young woman, and when I say young woman, I mean 18-year-old woman, was murdered, and she was Latinx, or she looked as she was indigenous. She brown skin, looked just like us, and she was murdered in Chicago, and the baby was taken from her womb. And I don't know if the babies even survived. What I will say, in the Savannah Greywind case, the child survived and was returned to ultimately to the father and to Savannah's family. I know the last I'd heard, they didn't expect in this latest case that the prospects for the child's survival was pretty grim. Obviously, these are not exactly skilled or mentally stable people doing something like this, but I mean, it's absurd that this crime is not even a unique thing anymore. We know two circumstances, relatively recently, where some people thought that this was a worthwhile plan to savagely, I don't even know if that's the word to use, but to murder a young woman. And look, it doesn't matter how pretty these women were, which they were, but it doesn't matter. The idea that you could get yourself to a place mentally that you could commit such an heinous act against a woman to steal the baby from within her womb. As soon as I saw the story in the news, I mean, obviously, Savannah Greywind came to mind, and when I watched Wind River in the theater with my wife, all I could think about was, even the whole time I was watching the movie, all I could think about was Savannah Greywind, because it was a real life thing that was happening at the time. And I saw this movie in the theater, so this movie had just come out right while this news item, this story, and look, if you didn't ever hear about Savannah Greywind, then I guess that is an example of how little attention the violence against women garners. I mean, it's kind of absurd. And now this story in Chicago, and again, my sympathies with the families, and I just shake my head when I think about the violence that women face in general, and then what women of color face. I mean, whatever violence women face, you start multiplying by factors of 1 and 2 and 3 what a woman of color faces. And of course, look, I'm not going to shy away from this thing. Much of this comes back to the whole sexualization of our women. I mean, it's almost absurd. I mean, when I think about even the role that places or companies like Disney play, Pocahontas, and all of these, these cartoons that have been out there for years that again always sexualize, especially brown women. And look, I'm not. Don't say this to negate the fact that black women face many of these the same circumstance. But when you look at what they've done in the media with Hispanic women, with Native women, there's always been this tendency of Hollywood and the media. I mean, the brown skin. I mean, obviously, swimsuits and tropical climates and all that other stuff. Just overly sexualized women. And that just encourages the mindset that is going to, you know, settle it in the minds of people who think that they can just do what they want to women. At the same time, you've got old white men legislating what a woman can do with her own body, while they protect what white men, especially, do to a woman's body. I mean, the absurdity is just incredible. And look, I dare anybody to go into any of these court dockets and look at what happens when a white man or a white boy does something to rapes a woman, versus when a person of color, when a man of color does, a black man or a Native man or a Hispanic man. I mean, it's like, it's literally like night and day. And of course, when the victim is a white woman, I mean, look at the situation up in Minnesota there when the black cop kills a white woman, which was a terrible thing. But he's the first one to get convicted in such a way. When a white cop kills a black woman, it was a threat. I mean, he gets away with it. Sandra Bland, I mean, we can give you case after case. Not just, and this isn't just white cops killing a black man. This is white cops killing a black woman. The standards, I mean, there's no parity. I mean, there's no equality here. And the fact is, you know, and I'm not begrudging white women, you know, because they are victimized as well. But it's, again, if you're a woman of color, if you're a Native woman, you know, you are among the most vulnerable people on the planet. I mean, to the point where the idea that a pregnant woman in her 7th, 8th, 9th month of pregnancy, that somebody could target that woman as a victim of such an act of violence, is to not only kill the woman, but the idea that you're going to steal. I mean, is there anything that represents more depravity than the idea of cutting a child out of a woman's womb? I mean, look, anybody can come up with something that's worse than that. I don't even want to hear it. I don't even want to hear it. Because when I see this stuff in the news, I mean, I get filled with rage. I get disgusted. But this is why we all need to do more. I mean, look, we've got to care. And, you know, from a Native perspective, and look, not all Native people live on Native territories, but our communities, our Native territories, should be a safe place for our people. I know it's tough when, I mean, Savannah Gray, when she lived in the city, she lived in Fargo, North Dakota, and you know, and our people are vulnerable there. They're I mean, in spite of the fact that there's police forces and there's, you know, all the resources to investigate and to prosecute and all that other stuff, unlike what happens on our remote territories. The problem is the culture of a city and the culture of the justice, system, the police system. It doesn't offer the same equal protection to people of color, Native women, black women. So we need to do more. We need to do more as families. We need to do more as communities. And I'm not just talking about Native communities. Look, if you live in a city, there too you need to have a community. It's not enough just to pay rent and have a place to sleep. You should know who your neighbors are. I know that's difficult. I mean, that's not the model people think of when they live in New York City necessarily. But I'll tell you, our territories, our communities, our Native communities, the res, they should be safe places. They should be safe places for us. And look, I understand that we've brought retail, you know, industries into our territories, and so we have people that come in our territories. But you know what? Just because there's a road that goes through our territory doesn't mean that road should invite violence against our people. And of course, this is the problem that exists, and I've talked about this on previous shows, but with these industries, especially these industries that are sponsored by multinational corporations. So the oil industry, the extractive industry, the pipeline industry. Even when we do run a highway through our territory, what's the downside to it? I hear every so often, well, this is why we got to make sure we got people who were voted into office. No, that's not the solution. We need to make sure that we use our resources together. Because I'll tell you, the woman who got named a federal judge, and everybody was even calling for her to be put on the Supreme Court, Diane Humatiwa, the first case that she heard involving native peoples had to do with native peoples who were trying to stop a highway from going through their lands, going through their ancestral lands. And why? Some of this is that very reason. Look, Murray Porter's song, Highway 16, that's called the Highway of Tears. Because when these highways go through our native territories, the only people around to be victimized are us, our people, and our women. So when Diane Humatiwa had to hear a case about a highway getting put through, I don't know if it was Apache territory or Navajo territory, she ruled. It was in Arizona. She ruled against the Native people. No, she approved. She didn't think the Native people had a right to protect themselves from a highway going through their ancestral homelands. So much for wanting a Native judge to hear a case. So much for wanting a Native congressman or a Native president or vice president, whatever the hell those people are asking for. We need to do more to resist and put up resistance to the threats that face our people. The threats from within our territories and from the outside. And again, I have to reiterate this point. We have to create opportunities. So again, I'm going to throw it out there. We call these our LTN studio. This is our LTN studio. We're on the Cattaraugus territory of Seneca Nation. You can reach me on Facebook, message me. If you're interested in, maybe you just want to record. Look, maybe we should do next show. One of my favorite videos that was produced 7 or 8 years ago, was by the 1492s, and it had to do. It's called "To the Indigenous Woman," and there's a short video. There's long form and short form. And what's disturbing about that video is not just the message, but the fact is that after 7 or 8 years of this video being out, it's only been shared or viewed 54,000 times. Put a squirrel video on YouTube and it gets, a million hits. Kitten videos, 1 million hits. But when somebody takes the time to produce a video with a strong message, we have to promote this stuff. And part of promoting it is to do more. So again, we have a facility here, and we would love to. I'd love to entertain some young people who have some creative ideas. I talked once about trying to do a meme contest, so at least get some young people thinking. And obviously it'd be easy to, do a meme contest. You could, measure it by how many likes or shares it gets or something like that. I don't know, but we would love to see some public service announcements produced, just some basic PSAs on any number of environmental issues, violence against women issues, whatever, sovereignty issues, culture issues, whatever. We could do audio and we could do video. And I'd love to see some people take me up on the offer. Maybe join us on occasion. Look, and if somebody wants to join me on this show, you don't have to get mic'd up and you don't have to be nervous. Just sit in and see what we do here. And because there's an opportunity here. Nobody's going to get rich doing this. I'm certainly not. But, this is the kind of thing that we have to understand, that in order for us to empower young people, we have to provide opportunities. So that's my offer out there. I'm not going to New York this week. We're back here on Tuesday anyway, but next week I'm home for the week, so maybe we'll do an extra video next week as well. I do encourage you to check out 500 Years, our latest video that Jake and I produced. It's something unique. It's a little different than the videos of the past, and it may be the first step towards us upping our game, as we say in the production of these small videos. So look for it, share it, and give me your comments on it. We'd like to discuss it. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. We'll be back here on Tuesday. See you then.